Hi everyone, I'm Andy Crispin, Editor-in-Chief of Water World. Today I'm talking with John Rehring. He is a Vice President and Senior Project Manager with Carollo Engineers. So John, thanks for stopping by to talk with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me here.
So you're giving a talk here at WEFTEC 25 called Discharge Avoidance, Emerging Driver for Potable Reuse in the West. Now, I went down the rabbit hole a little bit trying to figure out what that is, because I usually do drinking water, not wastewater, for one thing. And then discharge avoidance kind of opened a new can of worms for me also. So can you explain what discharge avoidance means in practice and why it's becoming increasingly important in potable reuse in the West?
Sure thing. So first off, drinking water is absolutely part of potable reuse, and that's kind of the fun part about it. Now it's bringing wastewater treatment and water supply all together into one. So that, for me, is what makes it really fun. But what does discharge avoidance means? When we start to see wastewater discharge permits evolve, they're becoming more and more stringent in terms of parameters that are already in those permits and the limits that are on those different parameters. But also there's new parameters that water resource recovery facilities really haven't dealt with before and really aren't equipped to deal with. And as a result, that's driving what would need to be some pretty significant capital improvements, new process trains, new process equipment that they don't have now. And so it's really driving the need for big capital investments. And so discharge avoidance means, what if we were to discharge less of that flow so we didn't have to treat it with all these new treatment processes, or maybe in some areas we might be able to eliminate discharges altogether, and that way then we can save on some of those investments that are otherwise needed just to discharge the water back to the receiving water. Could we instead take that water and purify it and put it into the drinking water system?
Okay, all right. No, that makes it make a lot more sense. Okay. Because I thought discharge avoidance was, I thought you wanted to discharge water back into the environment, but you're talking about just reusing it right from the get-go.
Yeah, reduce or eliminate discharges back to the receiving water to avoid some of those capital costs and operating costs that would go with the new parameters or more stringent limits.
Which would bring us to DPR, which we'll get to in a minute.
Sure.
Okay. Which regulatory requirements do you see as the biggest challenge for wastewater utilities and why?
So that varies a bit depending on where you're at in the country. But some of the things that we're starting to see now are things like limits on temperature. So we all use hot water in our homes and businesses. That increases the temperature of the water that ends up at our water resource recovery facilities. And then depending on the aquatic biology of what you're discharging into, there can be some sensitivities to that. And so we're starting to see temperature limits that we've never seen before for discharges. And that's the kind of thing that water resource recovery facilities just aren't equipped to deal with. And so that's new process equipment, right? And kind of figuring out what's the right way to do that. That's one example. Another is salinity components. So dissolved constituents like chloride or sulfate. Those are also things that we're really not equipped to remove at most water resource recovery facilities. And so it's possible, right? We've got the technology, but it's not in place at those plants now. And to put it into place would be really expensive and operationally complex. And so those are a couple examples. Also, we're seeing tighter and tighter limits on things like nitrogen and phosphorus, or daily limits. That means you don't really have much wiggle room in terms of compliance. You've got to be meeting that, every day consistently without the ability to average that out.
Okay. All things I had not considered. Well, the first one, especially the temperature.
Yeah.
I had not considered that at all before. So, all right. Now, with direct potable reuse regulations in place in 4 states now, so Colorado, California, Florida, and Arizona, how do you see these frameworks influencing project feasibility and accelerating adoption in other states?
Yeah, it's a great question. Having the regs in place really facilitates fact-based decision making. And so reuse and potable reuse in particular isn't going to be the right answer for all communities, right? It's definitely local specific depending on the needs, the values, the water resources that are there. But what it allows us to do is to give a good, solid, fact-based evaluation of reuse or potable reuse as an alternative for that community. If we don't have the regs in place, or before you have regs in place, you're kind of left guessing, right? You're going to guess, you're going to assume, you're probably going to guess or assume things that are pretty conservative in terms of the requirements, so that you don't miss the requirements. That's going to drive the costs up. And if you're overly conservative in your assumptions versus what you actually end up needing to do per the regulations, that just makes things more expensive.
Right.
And if it makes it more expensive, then it's going to look less attractive, and it might rule it out kind of artificially, right, or unnecessarily. And so having the regulations in place is really beneficial in terms of we know the rules, we know what it's going to take, so we can plan around that. We can have real world costs that go with that, and we can make smart decisions about it. So the confluence of these stricter discharge limits or new parameters we're not equipped to deal with, coupled with having the DPR regs in place, those two coming together really now makes potable reuse look pretty appealing, or at least interesting and worth looking at for many more communities than we've seen in the past.
Yeah. When I first started in this industry, I thought, oh, regulations, everybody must hate that, because
right.
more rules. But then, as I've been here longer, I noticed that that's often the case, is that we're waiting for the regulations so we know what we're getting into here. So
yeah, and they help. Not only the utilities do the planning, right? So you know the rules and you know how to comply with them, but also for potable reuse, we're really need to invest in community engagement, community understanding, and having those regulations in place, saying don't just trust us that the water's good, but we've got a third party looking over our shoulder to make sure that the water's safe. Really, really valuable when we go out to the community and talk about potable reuse.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, well, we can talk about that now. I was going to ask you that a little later, but we can talk about that now. How should utility leaders communicate the value of potable reuse? I've heard toilet to tap, I've heard all kinds of things, especially when framed around the regulatory compliance and discharge avoidance, which we were just talking about. So ratepayers and community stakeholders really, truly understand the benefits.
Yeah, so first and foremost, the most critical thing is open, fact-based, transparent communication. We don't have anything to hide, and for sure we could overwhelm people with technical details, but nonetheless, being open and transparent is really important. That's the first rule of communicating with the community about this. But then I think it's helpful to really explain the basis for this, right? We're not just coming up with this, but rather there are drivers that are causing us to look at this. For example, if you can communicate the cost that it would take to continue to discharge with the new regulatory requirements and help people understand that, and then also understand the alternatives, and basically just walk them through the decision-making process that you're going through, right? So here's why we're looking at this, and here's the alternatives that we're looking at, and then getting some of their input and feedback to that too, because a lot of it's values, right? We're making trade-offs and priorities about what we do. Some things are more costly, but maybe have reliability benefits, that kind of thing. Get them involved in those trade-offs. When we did a demonstration at Colorado Springs Utilities a few years ago for potable reuse, it was a really nice demonstration of that at the demonstration facility, where Colorado Springs Utilities did a great job of having a technical tour of the process train and helping people understand kind of the technology and the multiple barriers we've got in place, but then coupling that with education about their water resources. Where does our water come from now? Where does your water go to when you flush it down the toilet or from your home or business? What are all the different water resources that we use today to meet the community's needs? What are our concerns with those? Whether that's climate change, persistent drought, Colorado River issues for those that depend on Colorado River supplies. Helping the community understand those challenges and how those are evolving and changing helps really set the context then for where reuse fits in and how potable reuse as an evolving kind of tool in that toolbox, where that could fit in, where that might help meet some of those challenges.
Yeah, well, excellent answer. Thank you so much. Sometimes people just say, well, you should be open and honest, and that's it. So that was a very good answer. From your experience leading DPR demonstration projects, what lessons learned can help utilities successfully plan, design, and implement potable reuse projects, particularly when the driver is discharge avoidance rather than just water scarcity?
Yeah, so, and that's such a cool thing that we're seeing now, is that this is a driver that can be important for anybody around the country, right? It's not just a water scarcity thing. Really, anyone could be facing the same situation no matter where you are in the country, no matter how water rich or water scarce you might be. But in terms of demonstrations, tremendously powerful. They can be pretty powerful in really 5 different ways. One of those is if you were going to implement a new facility, it helps you dial in those design criteria a little bit more so you can know what it takes to meet those regs, but you're not overdoing it, right? So you can refine those and get the cost down to where it needs to be. Secondly, operator training. These are advanced processes or combinations of advanced processes that your operators maybe aren't used to operating and maintaining, so it can be really useful for that. Regulatory development, helping to show the regulators that the technology is there, show them the water quality data, right? Don't just say, trust me, but show them the data. Really important. We use that in Colorado to help advance our DPR regulations that were the first in the country of any state. Fourth area is research and development, of course, so it's a good kind of test bed, or can be for that. And then the 5th one is community engagement, like we've been talking about, right? Really powerful to show people. Don't just tell me about it, but show me. Seeing is believing, but tasting is really believing.
I can attest to that.
You can.
I can attest to that, yes. I have drank the water at a treatment facility, and I thought, oh my gosh, this is great. It tastes like it should.
Yeah, that's one of the best compliments we get is tastes like water.
Yeah.
It tastes like water because it is, right? And
well,
it's
thank
just
you so much
water.
for stopping by and talking to us today.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity to visit. I appreciate it.
Sure. All right, guys, you heard them. It should taste like water. For more video interviews, please go to www.dmag.com/videos.